Hey guys, so yesterday when we finished our chapter, um, Samuel had come upon a farm and had met these really nice people that fed him very well, and it was just a really nice place. And he left, and as he was leaving, he passed some Hessians, some of the soldiers from, I believe it said Germany. Yeah, there were some troops from Germany that helped the British soldiers, and they were not very nice people. And so he turned back around and followed them to see where they were going. And sure enough, they went to the farm of the really nice people. And he watched them gun down the mother and father. And the little girl named Annie had run into the woods. And so now he says the biggest thing he can do to help that family is to find Annie and take care of her. Part 3, Green, New York. Because remember, when he was at that house, the father said that all of those soldiers were headed towards New York, and that he thought that's where the soldiers were headed with his parents. War orphans. Children orphaned by war, as countless were during the Revolutionary War, suffer from nightmares and sleeping problems, headaches, stomach aches, anger, irritability, and anxiety. Severely traumatized children may become withdrawn, appearing numb and unresponsive, and sometimes becoming mute, meaning they wouldn't talk. When the danger and devastation end, children can show remarkable resilience and recovery if they are in a safe and stable environment where they are cared for and nurtured. After the Revolutionary War, however, many orphans, if they were not taken in by other family members, grew up in institutions. Formal adoptions were very rare, and institutions are kind of like camps almost, where I don't want to say hospital because I don't think they were like hospitals, but kind of like dormitories where kids just lived because they didn't have families anymore because their families were killed during the war. Very sad situation. Chapter 12. He found Annie huddled in some hazel bushes, crying. When she saw him, she ran and threw herself at him, grabbing the edge of his shirt, silent except for soft sobbing. For 3 days. Unless she was asleep or tending to herself, she would not get more than 4 feet away from him for 3 solid days. She held onto his clothing and did not say a word in all that time. Why do you think she was like that? Why do you think she was so clingy to him? She was scared. At night, he would wrap her in his blanket and sit away from the glow of the fire and doze, and she would cry in her sleep almost all night. It bothered him that she had no shoes or moccasins, and he had no leather to make a pair for her, but her bare feet were amazingly tough, and she kept up with his rapid pace much better than he would have expected. They drank from creeks, which were common, and shared the small amount of food Ma had given him. Annie did not eat for the first 3 days, and he worried at that, although she drank. But in the evening of the 3rd day, she took some food and seemed to come out of a cloud she was in, little by little. He was having a very difficult time with almost everything. The jolt from what his life had been just short weeks ago to what it was now had been so sudden, the gulf so fast, that he felt he was in a completely different world, one dominated by violence and insanity. The woods were the one thing he knew and still believed in. He was thankful for the haven of the forest as they traveled. Still, his rage would not go away. He stifled it, but he seethed with anger every time he thought of the Hessians and how they had killed the Clarks, of how they had tried to kill Annie, of how the raiders had slaughtered the peaceful settlers for no reason. He wanted to punish them, make them pay for what they'd done, and could think of nothing to do except act as insane and violent as they had. Kill someone. Find someone in a red coat and shoot him. He knew it was not something he could do, even though he thought of it. And so he drove himself and, unfortunately, Annie in a forced march that covered over 15 miles a day. It would have not been so hard except that the trail had become a proper road. There was still forest on either side, but settlements, then small towns, appeared regularly. They often saw local people or detachments of redcoats marching on the road. They avoided everybody. Samuel trusted no one, not even people who might have been friendly. Annie complained only once. "We jump into the woods every time we see somebody," she said. "They can't all be bad." "Yes," Samuel said, thinking of the Hessians. "They can. Every single one of them can be bad, so we hide, and that's it." His voice had an edge that kept her from arguing. They worked around settlements and small towns, sticking to the trees, and on day 5, they'd been out of the food for a day and a half. Samuel shot a deer and took an afternoon, well back in the woods, to make a small fire with flint and steel and a little powder. He cooked the 2 back legs of the deer with stakes holding them over the fire, and when the meat was still rare, cut pieces from one of the legs, and they ate it squatting by the fire. He also cut off the strips of meat alongside the lower backbone, the tenderloin. Although it was quite small, he cooked that as well to save for later. They ate a whole back leg sitting there until Annie's face was coated with grease. They wrapped the excess in the cloth Ma had given them and were up and moving again, Samuel not wanting to waste daylight. He could think of little but finding his parents and getting them away from their captors. But he also realized that the odds were not good. He knew nothing of cities, or even towns, but New York City must be large and filled with people who would not be helpful since the British were there. Try as he might, he couldn't think of a way to get into the city safely to find his mother and father. With meat in his belly, he fairly loped along, so fast that at last Annie gasped, "You gotta slow down. I can't run like a deer." He slowed but kept the pace steady, so that when it was dark, hard dark, and he stopped, Annie fell asleep almost the instant he wrapped the bedroll blanket around her. He decided to make a cold camp and didn't start a fire. Since there was no smoke, the bugs, mostly mosquitoes, found him at once. They weren't as bad as they'd been on his hunting trips on the frontier, but then he'd always had a fire with smoke to keep them away. He was tired, although not like Annie, and he had some thinking to do. It took him a while to get his mind off the mosquitoes, and by that time there was a new sliver of a moon. In the pale silver light he saw Annie's face, wrapped in the blanket, just showing enough to let her breathe, and his heart went out to her. What does that mean, his heart went out to her? He just felt so bad for her. She was only 8, he thought, maybe 9, and her whole world had been absolutely destroyed. Were there many like her? Everything gone because of this war? The innocent ones were the worst part of it all. His mother and father making a life on the frontier, just wanting to be left alone. His mother trying to get the garden to grow. His father learning how to use tools, how to make his own house, wanting only to work and read and think and live a quiet, simple life with his family. All gone. His own life gutted, not as much as Annie's, but enough. He had to get his parents back. How? What to do? There were so many unknown factors that the question seemed impossible. He was one person with one rifle. Oh yes, he thought, smiling grimly, and a knife. And he felt that the entire world he was heading into was against him. He would have to get around them, the people in the world, some way, somehow. How? His eyes closed, opened, closed again, his questions spiraling down as he leaned back against a tree and slept. All right, today for your response, I want you to write out a plan. What could be a plan for him? He's going into New York City. He has nothing, no food, except for the animals he kills. And remember, New York City is more of a city. It's not just woods everywhere. So I want you to create a plan for him. Where's he going to go? What's he going to do? Is he going to pretend to be somebody he's not? How is he going to get his family back? That's your response.